He joins us this morning on the Harbor One hotline. Hey, Mike.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. You know what? I think Corey should be forced to go to drive on the Autobahn in Germany. Then he'll get his ass over to the middle lane. Because they come up in a hurry, boy. It's an experience. If you haven't done it, it's like 160 miles an hour is coming fast.
Wow. You seem like a guy who could occasionally veer into the road rage space.
You know what? The only thing that gets me is if I'm on a single lane road and somebody comes up and starts trying to kiss my bumper.
Yeah.
Then I immediately slow down.
Yeah.
That to me is fair enough. Just stay back. I don't need you on my rear end. Isn't
Wiggy,
that fair?
Yes. I mean, Wiggy, I think a little obnoxious with the flicking of the headlights. I will say, though, I think people are getting trigger happy when it comes to the horn.
Yes.
I don't know what the accepted amount of time is. If somebody is sitting in an intersection and the light turns green, like, could you give them
3 seconds?
No.
Yeah, can you give them 2 to 3 seconds? Like, people start leaning on their horn immediately.
Where you live, it's so bad. Seaport, it's as soon as the light turns, everyone's on their horn.
Right.
Well, you should be ready to go.
Half the time, people are sitting there because they're on their damn phone.
Right.
I give them the horn at 3 seconds tops.
Right. You should be. It should be like you're in the race car and you're looking at it as it goes, red, yellow, and you're ready to go. And as soon as that thing hits green, man, you're on the gas.
I was amused this week. Did you guys see the stuff from Michigan State University on their recommendations for words for their staff to use when they're writing to other people on the staff or students?
No.
Words to avoid: Christmas trees,
Yeah.
bells, reindeer, gifts, eggs, female, Eskimo. Can't say low man on the totem pole anymore. That's no good
That's
either.
not. Oh, you can't say that one.
No.
What is
Foreigner, terrorist. Do these people actually have students that pay to go to school there?
They pay a lot, I think. What is?
Oh my God!
What's
And this this is a kinder, gentler kind of approach to communications. But this is from a school whose mascot is the Spartan. Weren't they a little bit nasty in their time?
I think the Spartans were. Yes, I think they were. What is the issue with reindeer?
I don't know.
Okay.
What's the issue with female?
Yeah, I mean, I
You can't say sex change. It has to be gender transition.
Cute little animals. I believe the reindeer. They seem to me to be very cute animals.
I'm going to call the office and just say all the bad words right away. Right off the bat.
Well, Mike, you do that. On to hockey for a moment. Sheldon Keefe seems to be looking at this game tonight not as a regular end of regular season, mail it in kind of game, but as a real test for his Maple Leafs. Which I think says a lot about the Bruins and what they've done this season.
Well, it may be a test for the Maple Leafs, but it's not a test for the Bruins. I mean, they've already passed the test with an A+. And, yeah, I get it. I mean, they're trying desperately in Toronto where they haven't had a playoff win in, who knows how long, and they keep falling flat on their faces even when it looks like they're going to win. So, yeah, I think they'd be up for the game, and the Bruins will probably – I don't know if they're going to rest people or not, but it's a way to get to the record, I guess. But no matter who's in the lineup for them, they're so damn deep that they'll put up a show. I mean, I was shocked in Carolina when they had all their big guys out and they play with such incredible passion, and they did it against Pittsburgh too. This team finds a way, so bring it on, Toronto. We'll see what happens. But even if they do manage to catch a win, I don't think it's going to make them the favorites against the Boston Bruins if they turn up against each other in the playoffs.
We were talking about this earlier with regard to the Celtics. If you were Jim Montgomery, would you be resting guys the rest of the regular season?
I talked to my old boss, Harry Sinden, yesterday, and we were talking about the new load management term. And he said he had Bobby Clark, and this was a way back in the Canada-Russia series, and they were talking about resting guys, and Bobby Clark said to him, I'd much rather play the games than have to practice. It's so much harder to practice than it is to play the game. And he's right. I mean, the trainers will tell you that games are deconditioners because you only get, 15, 20 minutes if you're a busy guy. Sometimes you only get 10 minutes if you're on the fourth line. So, but you go to practice, you're constantly moving, you're constantly skating, and it's a tougher experience. You do lose the rhythm, you do lose some of the timing, but that for veteran players should be easy enough to get back within a game or so.
Mike, when you look at practice, kind of interesting that you bring it up. I know in football, I could just play the games, that would be perfect. What is the practice physicality there? Is it the fact that you're just constantly on your skates moving? You really never get a chance to sit down?
Yeah, the best practice, and the practices change now when you turn the page into the playoffs. They're less frequent, they're brisker and shorter, but you'll have the guys that aren't playing that'll be out there for an hour and 10, an hour and 15 minutes, and they're constantly moving. Yeah, and it's a good sweat, and it's a hard workout, and it should be, especially if you're just waiting in the wings ready to play. But for the A team, you'll find the practices get down to 30, 40 minutes at the most on off days, because there's just the workload is just so heavy going into April and May if you can push ahead.
I know the sample size is small, but have they fixed the power play?
You're talking about yourself here, Greg?
In your opinion, have they fixed the power play?
No, but what I do like about the power play, they'll fix the power play when the Bergeron unit is working well. But you'll notice that the guys that are playing now, they've gotten a chance, and they're finding different positions in different places on the ice. They're not as predictable, they're not as static, and they're hungry for the opportunity. And Marchand and Bergeron and whoever else is on the ice with them need to get back to that. When they need to start moving more, they need to start creating more. They need to get out of their static positions and rotate, because otherwise they're predictable and defendable.
Mike, Montgomery said that Taylor Hall would be doubtful for tonight, but said that he's nearing a return. Do you see him playing before we get to the postseason, and how much do you think he'll add for this team? I
hope he'll add, a lot. I think that you've seen him. He wasn't playing particularly well when he got hurt, but, we've seen him when he's on his game. If this winds up, and we've talked a little bit about this in the past, the third line could conceivably be Taylor Hall, Charlie Coyle, and Bertuzzi. That's a hell of a third line. Yeah. That's just an impressive grouping of guys to be on the third line. And if he's close to 100%, there's no question he's going to make a positive difference.
We talked a little bit about this yesterday with Sean McDonough, and I was vocal when the Lightning did it, so I guess I better be vocal about the Bruins. Do you think there's anything fishy going on here when it comes to Hall returning for the playoffs only, and the issue when it comes to the salary cap?
Well, the old saying, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. It's probably applicable here. Listen, I don't know. I have no idea. I haven't gone and poked around at Taylor Hall's legs and body to find out if he's really sore still. But I think, if they can use it and get away with it, God bless them.
Mike, one of the things I asked Sean McDonough, we talked about it, was physicality from regular season to playoffs. But obviously the game has changed where, the physicality is not as big as it used to be. When you talk about, I think you bring up Carolina and say if they're a physical team, they can maybe beat the Bruins in that way. Is it possible that a team that their skill could outperform physicality, or will physicality always win in the end?
No, physicality will not always win in the end, because if you're skilled enough and you have enough courage to get through that physicality and just continue to play the way you can, your skill will filter forward, and then you'll win the game. That to me is clear. I played so many times against the Canadians. We were physical, we worked hard, and they were just, sorry to admit it, but they were more skilled, and they beat us, and they deserved to win because they did the things that they had to do, despite the fact that we tried to smash their heads through the glass.
Mike, Zach Rinaldo was on First Up on the radio and was talking about Patrice and what he does both on the ice and off the ice, and why the Bruins are so disciplined. He was talking about that the whole team needs to be under 10% body fat year round. Is that something you've heard about with this team? That he said that there's no like carbs, there's
Well, they
no
didn't talk to
wine
me
on the
about it.
table.
I mean, I don't know what they're doing for dietary stuff, but clearly it's on the whole, guys are leaner and fitter, and they have, you walk in the morning, they have training table. You go to practice, you've got trainers there to stretch you. You've got, a practice, and then you come off, and then there's another training table and a trainer to stretch you. It's a much more scientific approach to the sport. I can't tell you that everybody's under 10%. I would guess that there's some of the bigger guys that are more than that. And I'm not going to be playing biology student here, but I think they're all in really good shape, and you can see that with the pace that they play at. The one thing that we haven't touched on is that they're really down to now 3 opponents, right? It's Pittsburgh, Florida, or the Islanders. And, you got to pick your poison here. Pittsburgh, I think, has lost. The shine is kind of off the apple there. They've lost some big games, and they've fallen back, and Florida's stepped up, but they don't scare me so much.
The Islanders do because of goaltending.
Yes, that's right.
Because of goaltending.
The goaltending, Sorokin is terrific, and they're plucky. They keep coming. They keep working, and their fourth line, which you don't usually talk about a fourth line, but they can be really disruptive, and they can really get under the other team's skin, and it'll be an interesting matchup if it goes that way. But that's the team I'd least like to see them play.
Although, I mean, it is, when you look at the Penguins, it's kind of like underestimating, or maybe you would say it isn't, but when you look at Sidney Crosby, is it like underestimating Tom Brady? Like, do you get that same, you have Crosby, you have Malkin, do you get that same veteran advantage when it comes to the playoffs that maybe you're not seeing during the regular season?
I think you could be surprised but it's just not Crosby, and it's just not Malkin. Malkin hasn't been the same. I mean, he's got some reasonable stats. Crosby always is impactful, but I don't love their defense, and their goaltending is middle of the pack at best. So I don't. And the thing is about when you face a team that has Crosby and Malkin, you're not going to be sleepy. You're not going to think, come on, we're just going to kill these guys, because Crosby and Malkin could, rise up from the ashes and make your life miserable. But right now, I don't see that happening. I see the depth of the Bruins at every area as being better than anybody else that they might play in the first round.
Mike, in hockey, is it possible, when you look at other sports, you're like, all right, Jason Tatum's got to have a big series, or Brady got to play well. When you look at hockey, is there, if I were to say, all right, who's the one person or that has to really elevate their game in the playoffs? I know Pasta gets criticized sometimes, maybe because of his playoff performance. Or is it too hard to do that in hockey, to individualize who that guy is? Or is it more of a group of guys or a goaltender?
You have to get the goaltending. That's number one. And I don't think there's any issue with that, except that neither one of these guys has been tested in the postseason, but neither one seems to have the personality that would be impacted by the pressure. They just seem like cool customers to me. But to answer your question, yeah, it's a group thing. Often in the playoffs, because you have time as a coach and a coaching staff to focus on the opposition. Who are you going to focus on? You're going to focus on Bergeron's line. You're going to focus on Krejci's line. And that slips down to the third line and fourth line. And I hate to call them third and fourth lines. It's just Coyle's line and Noshik's line. There'll be a little bit more room. There'll be a little bit more time and space. And you often see in the playoffs some of these guys that are not expected to become the hero of the moment. And I'd expect this to be no different in this season.
You took Wiggy's side when it came to the left lane road rage debate, so I'll ask you to settle one more before you go. Is long distance?
I think your meatballs were better.
Is long distance running a sport?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Why? What's the issue there?
No, he said he called the marathon
marathoning.
a sport, and I said no, marathon is just a competition.
DraftKings has to go to the State Gambling Commission to get permission to let their customers gamble on the Boston Marathon. I think it's a sporting event that happens here, and that you ought to be able to gamble on any sporting event. And I think long distance running, I think they're athletes, and I think it's a sporting event. That was the
Well,
debate.
I'm not sure the definition of competition versus sport, but I don't know enough about running to be too deep on this. But I do know that you've got to pace yourself at certain times. You've got to, run behind other runners to break wind and to make sure you're in position. You got to know you have enough in the tank. You got to find ways to find who your competition is, so that you can be in a position to rush to the finish line. So I don't know. It's a competition as a sport. So
All right. And then last
be
one for
friendly
me.
in there, guys.
We've been around the game forever, so I'll ask you this. Where do you rank the Trent Frederick one punch when it comes to one punches that you have seen in your time in this league?
He's been good at it. He seems to do it with a smile, doesn't he? Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a fun thing to see, but he's having a hell of a year, and I don't know how you keep this guy out of the lineup. There are a lot of options on the last line. Foligno comes back. Do you put him in? Is it a sentimental journey, or is he really going to play as well as he played earlier? He's been out an awfully long time. Frederick, I think, has 16 goals right now. Lauko's been visible every time he gets into the lineup, and you can't take Hathaway out because he's a pain in the ass to everybody. And Noshik is great on the draws, great on the penalty kill. They've got a lot of options. It's a good fit for them coming into the playoffs. But I mean, listen, who doesn't like a good stiff right hook or left hook or whatever Frederick throws?
Yeah. All right, Mike Milbury, always a pleasure, and we will talk to you next week.
Happy Easter. Hope you
Happy
enjoy your
Easter.
bunnies.
All right, enjoy it. That's Mike Milbury. We'll be right back.